Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne-pestana. And our special guest today is Chris Westfall, who's here to share with us his new book, Easier: 60 Ways to Make Your Work Life Work for You. So Chris is one of the most sought-after business coaches and keynote speakers in the world. He has helped launch over 6 businesses and has appeared on ABC News, NBC TV, and CNN. He's a regular contributor to Forbes and has worked with thousands of leaders of Fortune 500 companies, nonprofit organizations, and high-tech startups. A coach to entrepreneurs and executives around the world, his clients have appeared on Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, and Shark Tank Australia. So let's welcome to the show, Chris Westfall.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. Okay, so let's just start with the title. I mean, easier. I'm sure everyone's picking that up going, gosh, I could use a little easier in my life.
Well, that was the intention behind it. It's funny, when I came up with the title, the reason that I chose the title is because it's not just a book that I needed to write, but it's the book that I need to read. I mean, when you think about all the things that are going on in the world and all the things that are going on, the complicated lives that we all lead, I think you're absolutely right. Marianne, we all need a little easier. And inside this book, which is, it's a story, actually. So it's the story of a conversation that unfolds, and inside the conversation, inside the story, 60 ways to make life easier unfold. And when I sat down to write it, I said, you know what? I don't know that it's going to be 60 ways. I didn't know if it's going to be 100 ways or 50 ways or 12, or I had no idea. But in the course of writing the story, I just sort of put one foot in front of the other, or one word after the other. And what unfolded was 60 ways to make life easier. And so that's where the book came from.
Well, I understand that your book came from challenge, a lot of challenging places. We have a lot of people going through grief and loss right now. And when did you decide that this was a time to write the book?
Well, the book its origins came from a loss that I experienced during the pandemic. And I lost my dad to COVID before vaccines and that sort of thing. And he was taken very quickly. He was diagnosed on a Monday, and by Friday he was gone. And going through that experience, which there was nothing easy about it, as you can imagine, and facing into the grief and the loss, was extremely difficult for me, as you can imagine. But from that place, I decided to create something to honor his memory. The book is dedicated to my father, and he wasn't just my dad, he was my friend. We had a great relationship, and I wanted to honor his memory in a powerful way. And so from this place of grief and loss, I would find myself, Marianne, I would find myself sitting at stoplights just weeping and saying, why me? And how am I going to get through this? And somehow, some way, I made a shift. I made a shift around the grief and the feelings that I was going through. And I realized that the grief was not a bad thing, that it wasn't something to fight against or to try to manage or control. It was the love that I had for my father that was going on. He was gone, but the love was not, and it changed into grief for me. And I decided to embrace it. I decided that was part of my human experience and my humanity. And I shifted from how can I get through this to what can I get from this? What can I get from this loss? And part of what I got from it was an understanding of stepping into who I am, stepping into my identity, stepping into that loss, which, by the way, we've all felt a sense of loss over the course of the pandemic. That's no secret. We've all had things taken from us. But I wanted to reach out to people who were in that place, whether it's a place of loss or grief or just longing for things that have changed and shifted. And I said to myself, what can make this easier? And I self-identify as someone who has a PhD in making things difficult. I tend to make things harder than they need to be. And I decided to step into this place where things, even the most difficult things that life can throw at you, can be easier. Because for me, and I hope this doesn't sound crazy, but for me, easier always exists. Even when life isn't easy, there is an easier way to show up. There's an easier way to face into your grief or your relationship challenges or your work challenges or whatever it is that you're facing. There is an easier way. We just don't always see it. And hopefully what this book captures is a path and an exploration to help the reader to find that easier way.
Well, I am so sorry for your loss. I know this last couple of years have been really difficult for so many people in one way or another. And when you talk about grief, I applaud you because you talk about grief that goes beyond the loss of a beloved, loved one. Could be all sorts of things. You talk about, changes in a job or an old lifestyle. So when people are suffering any type of grief or loss, or maybe they're just struggling, is easier a really good fit for them to move forward?
I believe so. And I'll tell you why. Because again, easier is a story. So it's not a book that comes at you like the 10 Commandments. It's not a scolding letter of the things you're not doing or what's broken in your life. It's a story. And the story is quite messy. Because in order to create an easier experience, the folks in the story go through some very, very difficult times. It's easier as the story of a coach and a client. And the client is frustrated. He's frustrated with his job. He feels like he's not able to make an impact, and he wants to find the courage to quit. He wants to find the courage to do something else, but he's not sure what. He wants to maybe start his own business, but he's not sure how. So he hires a coach to help him to find his path. Little does he know that in 5 days, just 5 days, he's about to be fired. And so from this utmost career defeat, he finds an amazing victory. And what he thinks has happened to him in losing his job, which is absolutely the most unimaginable circumstances that could happen to his career. This story of career death becomes a resurrection story as he sees that even in the midst of difficult circumstances, there are things that you can do to make things easier. One of those things is hiring a coach, is finding another perspective to help you to expand your own, especially when it looks like there's only one way to win. There's only one way forward, and disaster is imminent, and all hope is lost. These are things that we say, right? All hope is lost. Guess what? Hope is never lost. Hope always exists. We just don't see it, or we don't want to see it. But in this story, the reader can observe what others are going through. So it's not preachy, it's not teachy, it's not instructional, it's not a guy that says, do this, not that. You observe and you see, and in these characters, you see yourself. You see new possibilities. And when we recognize that possibilities always exist, right? That's that making every moment count. We see that possibilities exist inside of every moment. Things get easier. And that's what the characters inside this book discover. And that's what the reader can discover as well.
So overall, do you find that people just make things so difficult? And you talk about having a coach, a mentor that you're working with. Is that to also help us get beyond just our limited vision on what's happening around us?
A couple questions in there. So is it just to get around our limited vision? The first step to creating change is a fresh perspective, is to understand, first of all, that possibilities exist. And if you have someone in your corner who's helping you to explore those possibilities, who's as focused on your success as you are, things get easier. And so that I think is the power inside of the coaching conversation, is to simply have another perspective, someone who can listen deeply and can help you to create that future that seems to be missing. And coaching is different than therapy, for example, because therapy, and I wrote about this in Forbes. I spoke to a professor at Harvard who is a clinical psychologist, but also a coach. And I said, what is the difference between coaching and therapy? And she said, well, therapy follows the trail of tears. Coaching follows the trail of dreams. And so for folks who are looking to create a future that hasn't shown up yet, or for folks that feel frustrated and stuck, like the client in this book, coaching can help to share a new perspective and in fact, a perspective that expands your own. Because at the end of the day, the answers that you're seeking don't come from some guru or inside of a book. Quite frankly, they come from inside of you. And the ability to see that capability is at the center of making things easier. And making things easier starts with a fresh perspective.
How important is it to really have a coach and have the right coach? Because I know we have a lot of coach seems sometimes like a buzzword, but is it important for us to kind of look for somebody that has some level of not just credibility, but success?
I think that success and credibility are important, but here's what's even more important if you're considering working with a coach. Ask yourself this question as you're having a conversation with the person that you might like to work with. Can this person help me? I mean, it's one thing to look at accolades and credentials, and I'm not saying that those aren't important, those sorts of validations and social proof and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you want someone who can help you to be your best self, to help you to see what it is that's missing, to see what it is that you are capable of, to help you to step towards that potential, whatever that might look like. And the best way that I've discovered in working with coaches myself and also in being a coach is to step into the conversation. And asking yourself questions like, do I feel encouraged? Do I feel supported? Do I feel like there is a perspective here that I can explore? And do I want to? And so those kinds of questions can help you beyond just the accolades, the credentials and that sort of thing. There's personalities and there's relationships. And I think that a coaching relationship, particularly when you are hiring someone to help you to create something that's missing, you want to make sure that the relationship is there and that you feel that kind of support. You feel heard and that you know that you are seen and that you have found in your coach a willing listener who has insights to share, insights that point you back towards your own wisdom, towards a perspective that comes not from outside, but from inside of you. And that's at the centerpiece of my coaching, but also that's the coaches that I work with, the folks that have made a huge difference in my life, and the coach that I work with, who I feature in the book, is constantly there, consistently there to listen and to share a perspective that points me back towards my own, to not find fault, but to remind me of my capabilities. And a coach that can remind you of what you're capable of and then help you to achieve it, that's what you're looking for to make things easier.
That's actually amazing to have that kind of connection with somebody that you are, that someone's working with to not just improve their business life, but maybe their personal life as well. And getting to that point where they're kind of rediscovering some things about themselves.
Right. And as the saying goes, it's never tougher than it is in your mind. The way that we think about things so often is what makes them so difficult. And, it's an observation that is explored in detail in the book. But when we recognize that we are not our thoughts, when we recognize that just because a train of thought shows up doesn't mean we have to ride that train, we find the ability to zoom out, to step back from our circumstances and see things in a way that is perhaps more neutral, which can be very, very valuable, especially if you're in a charged situation or a difficult relationship, or you're having a difficult conversation or a tough time at work, or whatever difficulty looks like to you. The ability to zoom out is vital, to step back and say, what's really going on here? It's like two people that approach a mountain, and one person looks at the mountain and goes, wow, look at that mountain. It's beautiful. I want to hike that mountain. And another person looks at it and says, oh my gosh, that mountain. I don't want to hike that mountain. I just want to go sit on the couch and watch Netflix. So the question is the mountain a good thing or a bad thing? One person sees it as good. The other person sees it as bad. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? The answer is it's just a mountain. And when we approach it with neutrality and we say, you know what, there's nothing wrong with sitting on the couch and watching Netflix, and there's nothing wrong with taking a hike. We see things in a new way and we zoom out, and that sort of, and it's counterintuitive, but when you really want to accelerate your life, you got to start in neutral to get there.
Well, I love how you share in your book about, just pivoting. And I think that's so important, kind of ties into what you were just talking about. It's so often, you hear people, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, as opposed to what they can learn from it or take away from it.
So true, Marianne. And asking yourself some simple questions, like if you're facing a difficult situation, just ask this question: what else could this mean? And a variation on that: what else could this be? And then a follow on to that, which is it's a very powerful coaching question that I've been asked. It's been asked of me many times, and I ask it of my clients, and that is, who would you need to be in order for things to change? And these questions, and I don't know what the answers are, but maybe folks listening to the sound of my voice are perhaps prompted to find their own. But when we look in the direction of who we need to be, we find a place of empowerment. When we look at things and say, what else could this mean? Is this mountain a reason to go home and watch Netflix? Or is this something that maybe hiking wouldn't be so bad? And I don't know. I don't know what the right, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see them, but the right answer is. But each of us, according to our gifts and talents and desires, we explore. We explore what it is that's not working. And when we step back, zoom out, and wonder a little bit about why that is, that's the first step in finding the empowerment to take new actions, to find new perspectives. That's the first step in creating real change.
Well, I just really had so much great appreciation for your book, Easier, because there's so much in there that I took away from your book. One of the things that I found interesting is, there's just so much discussion around things that possibly can also get us stuck. So what are some of the things that you see in your practice of people who kind of get hung up in one area or another?
A lot of folks show up in my practice and they're looking to make major change in their lives and create not just incremental improvement, but transformational growth. For example, I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, and some of those entrepreneurs have appeared on Shark Tank and Dragon's Den in Canada, Shark Tank Australia. So when people are trying to have very high stakes conversations that can create a meaningful change in their lives, in their businesses, that's typically when they show up to speak with me. And most of the folks that I work with are, on the surface you go, you are extraordinarily successful. One of my clients has won 4 Emmy Awards, for example. But we're working together to help him to create something that's missing, which is a platform for him as a speaker on stage. He certainly is speaking and working that microphone on television and on YouTube and on various social media platforms, but he wants to step onto stage as a speaker. And so exploring what that story looks like and bringing that story forward is something that I concentrate on. And I know that's some of the work that you do as well. But helping people, to me, looks like what it's all about. I think as human beings, we are here for a couple of things. We're here for service. We are here to be of service to others, and we are here to create things. I think that creativity, and I don't mean creativity like arts and crafts. I mean creating things. Creativity is the purpose that is inside of all of us, all human beings. And we create relationships, we create partnerships, we create agreements, we create pitches for the sharks on Shark Tank, we create problems for ourselves, we create conflict. We are here to create. And our minds are thought machines that can be used for good or for frustration, depending on how we choose to engage with our thoughts, those thoughts that are always creating things, those thoughts that are creating the world around us. And when we understand the role that thinking and thought plays in the world around us, we see that how you are showing up is what's creating the world around you. And if you show up believing that everyone is out to get you, and that thought permeates your very being, you're going to step into that identity, and you're going to show up in a way that makes life very difficult. Part of the exploration in the book is looking in the direction of what I call it pronoia. It's the opposite of paranoia. Pronoia is where you think everyone is out to help you. And I don't know if that sounds like a silly construct, but it's something that I try to step into, because in this world where there are problems and challenges and prices that we don't like and all those kinds of things, there seems to be, to me, a kindness in the design. And when we're in the middle of it, when we're in the thick of difficulty, we don't see it. We don't see it. But that's why we have to zoom out. That's why we have to step back. That's why having someone else to talk to can make such a powerful difference. When you understand that you don't have to go it alone, things get easier.
Do you find that entrepreneurs often feel like they're going to have to do it alone, and that kind of scares them?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I see folks that suffer from entrepreneuritis, and the number one symptom is expressed in this kind of cliche phrase, and that is, if it's got to be, it's up to me, right? I have to conquer the world. I've got to lift the world by myself. All that's going to do is get you a sore shoulder. I can't speak today. Sore shoulder. There it is. Anyway, you can't lift the world by yourself. Nothing of any value happens without other people. And it is connection that is also at the center of our humanity. And so finding those connections and finding the ability to trust people, especially the people that want to help you and that want to be of service to you, is the antidote for entrepreneuritis. But as a business owner myself and an entrepreneur, I've launched several businesses. I feel that every day. I feel like I've got to do this. No one can do this as well as me. Well, that's a myth. That's a myth that's wrapped in mistrust. And the fact of the matter is that I get better when I have other people around me and I don't rely completely on myself, when I have other experts. And in fact, when I hire people who have expertise that I do not, my own viewpoint and experience and expertise scales and expands. And that is the result of busting through that myth that if it's got to be, it's up to me, because that is just not true.
That sure makes for a hard working life if that's the case. Because I'll tell you, I greatly appreciate the people that work with me, and Lady does my website, bless her heart for doing it, because I don't want to touch it, so.
Right. I know what you mean. Yeah. For me, I have folks that help me in so many different ways, and the ability to lean into that, and the ability to find trust, which can be very, very difficult to find. But sometimes the way that you find it is that you stop searching for it and you start giving it. And that, to me, has been something that has made a big difference for me. So yeah, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. I mean, we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us, and we are here because people focus on service. I mean, like the shirt that I'm wearing today, I don't know who made it. I don't know who it was that created it, but thank God they did. And I'm glad to be able to wear it today. And so, and it's true for the cars we drive and the houses we live in and the roads that we drive on. I mean, those things came to us from others. We did not create those things. The waves hitting the shore, I didn't do that. Neither did you. But isn't it great? And isn't it a thing of beauty? And isn't it an everyday miracle that all of those things exist? And we are all here to make a contribution. We're all here to serve. And when we realize that the weight of the world is not on your shoulders alone, that to me is a powerful realization, especially for entrepreneurs.
Well, I think I just had an aha moment with you on that trust is given, because a lot of times people think you got to find the most trustworthy person. So maybe trust really isn't given,
It's true. And we don't trust ourselves. Like if this person proves not to be trustworthy, I can't trust myself to sort this out. I can't trust myself to have a conversation and really say what it is that I need. Well, that's a separate issue. That's not the person that you're working with isn't trustworthy. You need to trust yourself that you have the ability to figure things out, that you have the ability to have a conversation and judge people's character in a way that helps you to move your business forward. And by the way, if you get that wrong, you have the ability to fix it. That's the thing. As human beings, we often lose sight of that we have the ability to course correct. Inside of us, and I talk about this in the book, inside of us, there is an internal GPS. And I don't know about you, but when I make a wrong turn, my GPS reroutes. And that's true in my car, but it's also true inside of me. When conversations aren't going the right way, when relationships aren't going the right way, here's what I know. Possibilities always exist. Always. In every moment and in every way. I mean, I can say anything in this interview. I could say avocados. I could say Justin Bieber. I could say Littleton, Colorado. I mean, I could say anything. Not all of that is useful, but I could say anything. And the point I'm trying to make is not that I'm a horrible interviewer or crazy man on the microphone. I'm trying to say that these possibilities exist in every moment. And if it feels like there's only one path forward, if it feels like life is closing in on you, like a room that is shrinking, possibilities always exist. The challenge is we don't always see those possibilities. Well, how do you see possibilities, especially in the middle of difficult circumstances? Well, one way is to hire a coach. One way is to have another voice in the room, not just the voice inside your head, to help you to see things in a new way. At least that's been what has made a huge difference for me in working with the coaches that have helped make so many changes in my life, not the least of which is this book. But and hopefully the changes that I've been able to share with my clients. It starts with that fresh perspective and understanding that possibilities always exist, and asking yourself this question: what possibility would you like to explore? What possibility do you want to invite into your life that hasn't shown up yet? And that's where the coaching conversation can make a difference. And that's the centerpiece. That is the coaching conversation that is inside of Easier.
Do you feel that people sometimes they have a hard time dreaming big, so it's maybe safer to be a little small?
I know I did. I was working with a friend and mentor of mine. I was in a mastermind group, actually, and I was sharing some aspects of my business. And he looked me in the eye and he said, "Chris, I need you to do something for me." I said, "Okay, what? What do you need me to do?" He's a mentor and a friend, and I really respect this guy. And he says, "Listen, I need you to think big and act bigger." I said, "Think big and act bigger." And I'm like, what are you saying? I mean, are you expecting me to like go big time or be arrogant or act bigger than I really am and stuff like that? He said, "No, take bigger action than what you are willing to do right now. What is it that you won't allow yourself to do? What is that door that you won't open? What's that gate you won't walk through? What's that road you won't drive down? What does that look like?" And one of the things that I discovered inside of this idea of thinking big and acting bigger is it's not about going big time. It's about giving yourself permission. And when we grant ourselves permission to have the conversation we haven't been willing to have because we're so afraid that, how she's going to react or how he's going to respond or what's going to happen. And we try to predict the future, and our prediction of the future is always wrong. But because of that prediction, we get lost in thought and we don't have the conversation that we need to. What happens if you press the brakes? What happens if you come to a full stop and you say these two words to yourself: permission granted? Permission granted to take the action, to take that bigger action, that action that is elusive right now. And when I stepped into permission granted and gave myself permission to do things in a new way, to see things from a new perspective, and to have the conversations I hadn't been willing to have, to send the emails I for whatever reason I hadn't been willing to send, to connect in new ways, the results have been nothing short of amazing. I mean, Easier is actually the 5th book that I wrote since the pandemic began. I don't know if you know that or not, but I was a ghostwriter on 4 books before Easier. So Easier is the fifth one that I've written since the pandemic began. And I just finished my sixth for a ghostwriting client. So the point is that in order for us to create outputs like what I'm sharing, and look, Marianne, I'm not saying, and I'm a superhero. That's how I say, well, write all these books. No, I'll tell you how I did it. Permission granted. I allowed myself to get out of my head and get my fingers on the keyboard and take the action that I needed to share my story and to bring the story of others to life. That has been the permission that I have granted to myself and everyone listening to the sound of my voice. You can grant yourself permission. There's a permission you're not granting yourself today. I don't know what it is. You do. But if you grant yourself that permission, you will think big. You will step out of being small and you will act bigger because you will take the bigger action that's going to create the bigger results.
I just love that, Chris. Thank you for sharing that with us. My goodness, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
Sure. My website is probably the best place to start, and that is westfallonline.com. But you can also find me on all social media, on Instagram at Westfall Online. And also I have a YouTube channel that has a number of different videos and insights into communication, leadership, and how to make life easier. And that is youtube.com/Westfall Online.
Well, I've signed up and highly suggest everyone do the same. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. It's truly a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Well, Chris, it's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Easier, 60 Ways to Make Your Work Life Work for You. Easier is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, support our indie bookstores. If you'd like to get in touch with Chris, you can at his website, westfallonline.com. There you can learn about his other books and his events. We're going to pause here for a quick moment, and we'll be right back after this message. I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.